Go with Tony the Tiger and get what it takes to start every morning Kellogg's Sugar Frosty.
And I'm the super sweet monster with the super sweet new cereal, Count Chocula. Biffle.
Saturday mornings weren't just about cartoons. They were about rituals. The kind of ritual that every kid knew by heart. You'd drag yourself out of bed before the sun was even up, still in your pajamas, trying not to wake up your parents. You'd race to the living room, turn on the TV, and dive headfirst into a world of superheroes, talking animals, and brightly colored adventures. But let's be honest, no ritual was complete without one key ingredient. That giant bowl of cereal sitting in your lap, filled with rainbow-colored shapes, marshmallows, or crunchy flakes coated in sugar. But here's the part nobody told us. We weren't just eating cereal. We were swallowing advertising. Those bright boxes, those jingles you couldn't get out of your head, those cartoon mascots with their big smiles and catchphrases, they weren't our friends. They weren't here to entertain us. They were designed to manipulate us. There were characters every bit as iconic as the Ninja Turtles or the Thundercats, but unlike those shows, they weren't trying to tell us a story. They were trying to sell us something. And behind all the fun and color, the truth is a lot darker than you do. Because what if I told you that some of these mascots were built on outright lies? That some were tied to lawsuits and scandals so bizarre they sound like urban legends? That a spoonful of Franken Berry once sent parents rushing their kids to the hospital because of what it did to their bodies? That a sailor who wasn't even a real captain tricked millions of families into thinking they were eating something healthy when it was nothing but candy in disguise? And that one of the most beloved mascots of all time became the target of an online scandal so disturbing that the company had to shut him down completely? These weren't just silly characters plastered on cereal boxes. They were psychological weapons, engineered to hijack your childhood brain to make you beg, whine, and cry until your parents craved in at the grocery store. And once you learn the truth behind them, you'll never look at the innocent bowl of cereal the same way again. So grab a spoon, because today we're uncovering the shocking, twisted, and downright unsettling truth about your favorite nostalgic cereal mascots. And by the end of this video, I guarantee you'll be questioning more than just what you had for breakfast.
It makes you roar. Wow! Amazing, isn't it? And Kellogg's new...
When it came to cereal mascots, the one name that towers above the rest, a striped giant with a booming voice who made every kid believe that a sugary bowl of Frosted Flakes was the secret to strength, confidence, and athletic greatness. Of course, I'm talking about Tony the Tiger. He wasn't just a mascot, he was the mascot. He showed up in commercials that felt like mini movies, racing kids on the track, dunking basketballs, and flexing his muscles like he was the ultimate breakfast coach. And for a long time, we all bought into it. If Tony said they were great, then who were we to argue? But here's where things take a strange turn. Frosted Flakes weren't exactly the fuel of champions. In reality, they were little more than cornflakes coated in sugar, over 30% sugar by weight. Yet Kellogg's used Tony to push them as part of a balanced breakfast. Critics jumped on it, calling out the company for using a lovable cartoon character to sell what was essentially candy in disguise. Imagine a cigarette company using Mickey Mouse to move packs of smokes. That's exactly how outrageous some experts saw it. Tony wasn't just a friendly tiger, he was a marketing weapon aimed directly at children. And as time went on, Tony's reputation only got stranger. In 2016, his official Twitter account became the center of an internet firestorm that Kellogg's never saw coming. Instead of the wholesome comments about cereal, Tony's account was flooded with messages and artwork from the furry fandom. Thousands of posts, many of them extremely suggestive, started pouring in. People weren't just calling Tony great, they were calling him something else entirely. And let's just say it wasn't suitable for Saturday morning television. It became so overwhelming that Kellogg's had to disable replies and publicly beg fans to stop. But of course, this is the internet. The more the company tried to ignore it, the worse it got. Suddenly, Tony the Tiger wasn't just a cereal mascot. He had become an unwilling icon of an online subculture, and Kellogg's could do nothing about it. Think about that. A character who once represented childhood innocence was now being reimagined in ways that would make your mom spit out her coffee. So how did we go from a tiger teaching kids about sports to a corporate nightmare Kellogg's couldn't contain? The truth simple is, Tony was never really about sports or health. He was always about selling sugar. And once the internet had got its claws into him, it exposed just how far removed this cartoon character had drifted from his squeaky clean image. And if you thought a tiger being turned into an online cult figure was bizarre, wait until you hear about the little leprechaun who spent decades being chased down by kids and the twisted psychology hiding in his marshmallows.
Thanks.
Where are your Lucky Charms?
Right here, my friends. They're part of this good, nutritious breakfast.
Brought Lucky Charms.
If Tony the Tiger was the confident coach of breakfast time, then Lucky the Leprechaun was the trickster we all couldn't stop watching. His commercials were like tiny cartoons, complete with slapstick gags, magical escapes, and that unforgettable jingle. Hearts, stars, horseshoes, clovers, and blue moons. For kids, those marshmallows weren't just cereal. They were treasure. And Lucky, he was the greedy little guardian of it all. But think about the storyline for a second. Every commercial had the same plot. Lucky clutching his charms while the hordes of kids chased him down, desperate to snatch them away. No matter how many tricks he pulled, no matter how much magic he used, the kids always caught him. Over and over again, for decades, the ads showed groups of children obsessively hunting down a leprechaun, tackling him, and stealing his prize. At first it seemed funny, but peel back the layers and it's kind of unsettling. These weren't just commercials. They were conditioning kids to believe that you should never stop chasing, never stop wanting until you finally get your hands on what you desire. Critics picked up on this. They pointed out that Lucky's entire character was built on stereotypes. He wasn't just a leprechaun, he was a walking Irish caricature, complete with greed, trickery, and a pot of gold. Parents wrote letters, cultural groups complained, but General Mills didn't care. Why? Because Lucky worked. Kids begged their parents for Lucky Charms at grocery stores, and parents gave in. Lucky wasn't about cultural sensitivity or moral lessons, he was about sales. And the marshmallows themselves, those colorful little shapes, they weren't chosen by accident. General Mills admitted that they ran focus groups and psychological studies on children to figure out exactly which shapes and colors triggered the strongest cravings. Those so-called marbits weren't magical. They were scientifically engineered to hijack kids' brains. Every new marshmallow shape, from rainbows to unicorns, was designed to create excitement, keep the product fresh, and ensure kids would whine until mom or dad put a box in the shopping cart. The marketing wasn't magically delicious. It was strategically addictive. Here's the kicker. Those shapes were so effective that they became cultural icons themselves. Kids would sit at the breakfast table, picking out their favorite marshmallows, trading them with siblings like they were currency. People weren't just eating cereal. They were consuming a carefully designed marketing experience that taught them to crave, to collect, and to never be satisfied with just one bowl. And while Lucky spent decades being hunted by kids in commercials, the truth is the kids at home were the ones being hunted. Hunted by advertising. Hunted by the psychology baked into every box. And the prize wasn't marshmallows. It was brand loyalty, cemented into children before they even were old enough to question it. So yes, Lucky the Leprechaun may look harmless, dancing around with his charms. But when you realize his entire existence was built on stereotypes, manipulation, and marshmallow science, it starts to feel a lot less like fun. And if you think that's unsettling, just wait until we get to the monster cereals, because those weren't just spooky themed breakfasts. One of them actually caused a medical scare so bizarre that parents rushed their kids to the doctor in sheer panic.
It's part of this good, nutritious breakfast.
And don't forget Franken Berry.
I like him that way. How about them monster for breakfast today?
Now, if Tony was the coach and Lucky was the trickster, then the monster cereals were the spooky cast of Saturday mornings. Count Chocula, Franken Berry, and Boo Berry weren't just mascots. They were characters with backstories, voices, and their own little monster universe. They'd argue in commercials, chase each other, and pull kids into their campy Halloween-inspired world. And as a kid, nothing felt cooler than pouring a bowl of scary cereal while watching cartoons. It was like breakfast and Halloween joined forces. But behind all that fun was something a lot less magical. Let's start with Franken Berry. In the early 1970s, doctors started seeing kids in hospitals with a terrifying symptom. Their poop was turning bright pink. Parents freaked out. Doctors thought it might be bleeding in the intestines, but after some testing, the culprit turned out to be the artificial dye in Franken Berry cereal. That's right, eating too much Franken Berry could literally change the color of your stool. The medical community actually gave it a name, Franken Berry stool. Imagine being a parent thinking your child has a life-threatening condition only to find out it was a breakfast side effect. Funny now, horrifying then. And it wasn't just Franken Berry. Blueberry, the ghostly blueberry flavored cousin, was made with dyes that some scientists later linked to hyperactivity in kids. Parents began to complain that their children were bouncing off the walls after eating these cereals, but the ads kept rolling, painting the monsters as quirky and lovable. And then there's Count Chocula, arguably the most famous of the bunch. He was billed as a chocolate-loving vampire, but some parents saw something darker in him. There were actually controversies around his design, with some groups accusing General Mills of making him look like a caricature of Eastern Europeans, complete with exaggerated features and a Dracula accent. But maybe the creepiest part isn't the dyes or the stereotypes, it's the mascots that disappeared. Alongside the main three, General Mills also introduced Fruit Brute and Yummy Mummy. Fruit Brute was a werewolf, and Yummy Mummy was, well, a mummy covered in rainbow bandages. And then one day, they were gone. No farewell commercial, no big finale, just quietly discontinued. For years, fans speculated about why. Some say they just didn't sell well. Others believe the characters were too scary for younger kids and General Mills didn't want the backlash. But the sudden vanishing of two mascots only added to the creepy aura surrounding the monster cereals. Here's the wild part. Decades later, Fruit Brute and Yummy Mummy became cult legends. People hunted down old boxes on eBay. Collectors paid hundreds for memorabilia, and even Quentin Tarantino slipped a Fruit Brute box in Pulp Fiction and Reservoir Dogs as a nostalgic Easter egg. These weren't just cereals, they had become pop culture icons with a weird, lingering afterlife. When you look at it all together, the monster cereals weren't just spooky fun. They were tied to medical scares, health controversies, and mysteries that left fans speculating for decades. A goofy pink Frankenstein might have been selling marshmallows on TV, but in real life, he was terrifying parents in hospital waiting rooms. And if cereal monsters giving kids medical scares isn't bizarre enough, just wait until we move on to the bird who told us to follow your nose. Because his story takes a surprisingly creepy turn that fans are still talking about today.
Kellogg's Fruit Loop cereal. Real fruit flavors, orange, lemon, and cherry.
Every kid knew the line, "Follow your nose, it always knows." That cheerful little rhyme was Toucan Sam's ticket into our living rooms, our grocery carts, and eventually, our stomachs. With his rainbow-colored beak and charming British accent, Sam was the lovable tour guide of breakfast time. He'd swoop through jungles, sniffing out bowls of Fruit Loops with his trusty nose, leading kids on magical adventures. To us, he felt like a friend. To Kellogg's, he was a salesman in feathers. The truth is, Fruit Loops were basically sugar rings dyed in different colors. But here's the kicker. They weren't even different flavors. No matter what the color was, red, yellow, green, blue, they all tasted exactly the same. That rainbow of flavors Toucan Sam was selling, it was an illusion. Kids were tricked into thinking every color was unique, when really it was just sugar dressed up in food dye. For decades, people didn't even realize it. Parents assumed the fruit in Fruit Loops actually meant fruit, but spoiler alert, it didn't. In fact, Kellogg spelled it with 2 O's because there was never a shred of real fruit inside. And yet, Toucan Sam sold the dream so well that kids and their parents didn't care. He was everywhere. Commercials, cereal boxes, even plush toys. But not everyone was charmed. Health activists pointed to Toucan Sam as one of the most blatant examples of corporations targeting children with sugary junk food. They argued that Sam's bright design and friendly personality were meant to distract them from the fact that Fruit Loops were closer to candy than to breakfast. By the 2000s, Toucan Sam had become a poster bird, not for fun, but for unhealthy eating. But if you think that's the dark part, oh, just wait, because in 2020, Kellogg's made a decision that left fans horrified. They redesigned Toucan Sam. out went the sleek classic design we all grew up with, and in came a neon cartoonish version with massive eyes, garish colors, and a smile that looked like it belonged in a bad mobile app game. The internet lost its mind. Fans flooded social media calling it cheap, soulless, and nightmare fuel. Memes spread like wildfire. People compared him to a bootleg knockoff you'd see in a discount store. The backlash was so brutal that Kellogg's quietly backtracked, eventually returning Sam to something closer to its original design. But the damage was already done. Toucan Sam, once a beloved symbol of Saturday mornings, had become an example of just how disconnected corporations can be from their very audience they're trying to sell to. And the creepiest part? For a brief, cursed moment, kids sitting at breakfast had to stare into the wide, unsettling eyes of a bird that looked less like a fun guide and more like something out of a fever dream. It's funny. As kids, we trusted Toucan Sam to follow his nose and lead us to something fun. But looking back now, it feels like he was leading us somewhere else entirely. A place where sugar was king and marketing was scarier than any monster cereal commercial. And if you thought a beloved bird being turned into nightmare fuel was bad, just wait until we talk about the so-called captain of the cereal seas, because his biggest scandal wasn't just about sugar. It was about the fact that he was never really a captain at all.
The plume, it say right on this box, Cap'n Crunch cereal with crunch berries. They taste like the strawberry, but they're not the strawberry.
Cap'n Crunch always seemed like a trustworthy sailor, guiding us through crunchy adventures. But the truth, he wasn't even a captain. Fans discovered that the stripes on his uniform represented the rank of commander, not a captain. The internet exploded with accusations of stolen valor, and the controversy grew so big that even the US Navy had to comment, joking that Cap'n Crunch wasn't officially recognized in their ranks. But the lies didn't stop there. The cereal was once sued over its so-called crunch berries. A woman filed a lawsuit claiming she was deceived into believing crunch berries were real fruit. The case was thrown out, but it exposed just how ridiculous some of these marketing tactics had become. And let's not forget the health controversies. Cap'n Crunch was accused of containing so much sugar, it was basically candy in disguise. Cap'n Crunch might have seemed like a friendly sailor, but his story shows he was more of a con artist than a captain. When you look at these mascots together, a disturbing picture emerges. They weren't just silly characters selling cereal. They were weapons of psychological warfare, engineered to making kids beg, whine, and cry until their parents gave in at the grocery stores. They were the smiling faces of sugar addiction, lawsuits, bizarre medical scares, and even fan culture scandals. Tony the Tiger wasn't just about being great. He was a magnet for controversies the company never wanted you to know about. Lucky wasn't just a leprechaun. He was a product of engineered obsession. The monsters weren't just spooky fun. They were tied to medical nightmares. Toucan Sam wasn't just a bird. He was redesigned into corporate horror. And Cap'n Crunch wasn't even who he said he was. So next time you pour a bowl of cereal and see a smiling face on the box, remember, there's always a darker story hiding behind the mask. And if cereal mascots were this disturbing, just wait until you hear about fast food mascots. Ronald McDonald, the Hamburglar, Grimace. Their stories are even weirder, darker, and downright disturbing. That's coming soon, so make sure you're subscribed and ready to go. And now, well, I've got to ask, who was your favorite cereal mascot growing up? Did you follow your nose with Toucan Sam, or chase after Lucky, or stick with Tony the Tiger? Drop your answer in the comments, and if you learned something new, or if your childhood just got ruined all over again, hit that super thanks button to support the channel. Trust me, you won't want to miss what's coming next. See you next time.